I would like to welcome you all to day 3 of our virtual investor Fireside Chat series. My name is Janine Thomas, CEO of JTC Team, and I will be your moderator and host of this event. For the lineup and schedule of today's presenting companies, visit www.vifiresidechat.com. All of the chats are being held June 15th through 17th. We'll have a video webcast replay available on this website, as well as each presenting company's sites. I'm now pleased to be joined by our next chat, Mike Ballardie, CEO of Slinger Bag. Slinger Bag is listed on the OTC and trades under the ticker SLBG. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. During our discussion today, Mike will be making forward-looking statements. Please refer to the company's SEC filings and website for the latest information. Also, following the moderated portion of this discussion, we will be taking questions from our participants, and we will get to as many as possible. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today.
Hi, Janine. Thanks for having me.
So Slinger Bag is fairly new. Could you please provide an overview of the company for those who might be new to the story? And also, how did Slinger Bag come about?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned in the introduction that Slinger is a product for all ball sports, and with our initial focus on tennis. The reason that we're looking at tennis is that Joe Calfer, our founder, is an avid tennis player. He plays, he's lucky he gets to play a few hours every day. And, you know, at the end of the day, all good products come out of the background of trying to solve a problem. Joe's problem was that he couldn't find regular tennis partners. He tried his club's traditional tennis ball machine, found it very difficult and cumbersome to use, and ultimately had a eureka moment where he came up with a concept of putting a tennis ball machine inside a wheeled trolley bag, and ultimately that became Slinger. The good thing that Joe did then, he went out to check to see if other tennis players around the world had a similar craving for such a product. He launched a Kickstarter campaign, and what that turned out to be was probably one of the most successful sports Kickstarter events of all time. And we created a market immediately for something like 3,500 Slinger bags. So it was a great success. Sorry, yeah, go on.
No, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, one of the challenges in tennis is that, and one of the main reasons that tennis players quit playing tennis is their ability to find regular playing partners. And so what Slinger does is solves a problem for the sport itself by making available a product that can be your 24/7 tennis partner. But it also solves a problem for the actual tennis player with a product that is lightweight, transportable, versatile, and affordable.
Love it. I think this is going to be an exciting story for tennis enthusiasts, but also for investors. Can you share how you got involved with Slinger Bag and tell us about the team you've assembled?
Yeah, so my background is that, you know, I've spent a lifetime involved in sports, and particularly in tennis, as a player, a coach, and most recently for quite a while as the CEO of Prince, one of the largest tennis companies. In my career, I've been lucky enough to be involved with some very successful products that have been launched into the market. But I've also been presented many, many different products by people who had what I would call crazy ideas that actually never made it. When I first saw Slinger, my tennis gut told me that it was something that could make a difference in the tennis world. And so my way of working is that I immediately, within a few minutes, got hold of Joe, arranged to go visit with him within a few days, actually try Slinger on a court myself, find out for myself how it worked. And I think within a few days following that, you know, I'd signed up to run the company as its CEO. You know, because I have a passionate belief that Slinger is going to make a significant inroad into the traditional tennis market and become a significant player in the category. In terms of the team, you know, of course, we're going to be focused as a direct-to-consumer business. And with that in mind, my idea was to build a very strong, highly reputable team, but at the same time, you know, try and keep our company structure limited. So I brought on board a couple of people, a CFO and a COO. And between those two guys and myself, I think we've got more than 100 years experience in the sports and particularly in the tennis industry. We've also brought on board a CMO who's had a lot of experience building social media campaigns and running sales marketing campaigns. So we're a small group of what I would call highly talented individuals with a tremendous experience in this industry.
Well, it sounds like an incredible product, a strong team that you've assembled. You did mention the market. Can you give us an idea of the global tennis market opportunity? And is the Slinger Bag something any tennis player at any level can use?
Yeah, so what's interesting in tennis is that there's a lot of data, market research data that surrounds the tennis world. For myself, I sat on the Tennis Industry Association Board of Directors many years, and so was party to a lot of the internal data that exists in tennis. The tennis playing community is around the world is 100 million players. You know, that's what's the recognized number. But the most important number within that 100 million player number is the number of what we call avid tennis players. These are tennis players who play tennis probably once a month, or maybe even more than that, several times a week in some cases. And these number around about 20 million players. And so this 20 million player market is the target audience for all tennis brands, whether it's the racket companies, whether it's Nike apparel, whether it's the footwear companies. And of course, it's the same market for Slinger. And it's these 20 million players who spend, on average, 80% of all the revenues that get spent in tennis, on equipment, on courts, on teaching lessons, and things like that. So these are the guys who are really, tennis is at the heart of the day-to-day lives, just as it is for Joe, our founder, which is why we're here.
Excellent. So you've talked about an innovative proprietary product. You've talked about the team that you've assembled. You've talked about a huge market. Let's talk about the competitive landscape. Are there other tennis ball launchers competing in this space? And what sets the Slinger Bag apart?
Yeah, in terms of the competition, I'm going to say yes, there are, but no, there aren't. And that means that, the tennis industry has seen tennis ball machines being available for about 50 years. Over that time, the technology of the actual machine itself has not changed that dramatically in terms of its size, its weight, its accessibility. What has changed is, of course, there's a lot of software being brought into tennis ball machines, just like any other industry. But nobody's really addressed the core issue of transportability, because without that, a lot of tennis ball machines sit in the country club, they sit in the pro shop in the corner and hardly ever get used because they're too cumbersome and too difficult to use. So the brands that are out there, yes, they're traditionally selling to institutions, to tennis clubs, to country clubs, colleges, universities probably, but none of them are really directing their sales towards the consumer. And where Slinger Bag is going to set itself apart, and in doing so, where it's going to create a whole new market, is that we are going to target the tennis player themselves directly with a product that's highly transportable, highly versatile, and highly affordable.
The more you share about this, the story just keeps getting stronger and stronger. I love it. I want to go back to something you started talking about earlier. You mentioned the company's success as the largest sports Kickstarter of all time. What does your sales and distribution strategy look like moving forward?
Yeah, so the Kickstarter campaign, it was crowdfunded early adopters, I suppose, who are interested in the Slinger Bag product. Over a 3 or 4 week period, we've managed to bring on board 3,500 of those. And I can tell you actually a small statistic about that in that we have a lot of market research now about the tennis ball machine around the world. And I would doubt that any single tennis ball machine brand has sold 3,500 units in 1 year. So I would say that Slinger could well be the #1 brand in tennis ball machines before we even start our business from day one. Yeah, so Kickstarter was a great concept. We learned a lot, and then what that taught us was that in the world's biggest tennis market, which is the United States, it's important for Slinger Bag to sell as a direct-to-consumer brand. Of the 20 million avid tennis players that I mentioned before, 4 million of those tennis players are in the US. And so it's for all the tennis companies, it's the biggest market. So direct to consumer in the USA. around the rest of the world, we're going to employ the same go-to-market strategy, meaning we will be a direct-to-consumer brand, but we're going to do it through third-party distributors. And those distributors are going to be independent, highly respected tennis companies who have a great depth of experience themselves in dealing with the tennis market in their region. We've already managed to line up half a dozen or so of those companies in different countries, none more important than in Japan, where Japan is the second largest tennis market, with 2 million avid tennis players. And we've signed up with a company in Japan called Bryan Inc. They're a publicly traded company on the Tokyo Exchange, and they've been involved in tennis for 40 years. And, they're super excited about being part of what's going to be a great business for them with Slinger in Japan. So we have a mix of strategies, one being direct in the largest market, and our strategy around the world is to have independent distributors.
That's great. Can you tell us more about some of these partnerships and how they impact the business? Of course, the distributors, the reason I'm picking up on through my knowledge and experience of the tennis industry, I pretty much know all of the major companies that distribute tennis personally. And so I'm approaching them and working with them on plans about how to adapt their current structures and business models to meet the needs of Slinger as a direct-to-consumer brand. In addition to that, I'm trying to support all of the distributors with some strategic brand partnerships that I've made. One of those is with a company called DSV Logistics. So all of our warehousing, freight forwarding, shipping is taken care of by that company. They're the largest of their kind in the world. And we have a fully integrated business system, which is coming from a company in Canada called Solentris. And this company's got a lot of experience in the world of tennis, working with a number of different companies over many, many years. And we're setting up a system which is quite unique in that our ERP system will have back-end access from all of our distributors, who will communicate, place their orders, get updates on their shipments, and all the things they need to know to be able to successfully run their businesses. You mentioned relationships that you have. You have some big names attached to the Slinger brand, like the Bryan Brothers and legendary coach Nick Ballardie. How did they get involved?
Well, firstly, on the Bryan Brothers. So anyone listening that's a tennis fan will for sure know Mike and Bob Bryan. I've been involved in tennis a long time, and I've dealt with many of the world's top tennis players over many, many years. I can tell you that Mike and Bob are the most professional tennis guys on the tour in terms of being brand ambassadors. They don't get involved with many companies, but the ones they do, they have a deep affection to, a deep passion for. And, when I got involved with Slinger, they were the first people I called because, I wanted to get their input onto the product itself. I wanted to understand, if it's something that players at their level would use on a regular basis. And, we've been building a great partnership with them over the past year where they've helped us, in all kinds of aspects, from social media advertising, even down to personally delivering some of our Slinger bags to our Kickstarter crowdfunding backers. So Mike and Bob are a tremendous asset for us to have. It's also important. We're a training aid or a teaching aid, for tennis. And so it's important for us to have tennis coaches involved with us that can help educate, help identify drills and practices for tennis players to use. And so there isn't a greater advocate in tennis than Nick Ballardie. So Nick he's been there, seen it and done it. He's coached and trained 10 world #1 players in his life. And an interesting fact with Nick is that I've known him for a long, long time. So, again, I made a direct contact to him. But Nick, believe it or not, has never, ever endorsed a training aid product, never. And he's deliberately not got involved in that because he had his own methods and ways of teaching. But when I introduced him to Slinger Bag, and when he tried it, he now is one of the most passionate advocates for Slinger Bag because he believes it could be the greatest training aid ever. Because for tennis teachers, around the world, it allows them actually to stand next to their pupil and talk to their pupil and see small things that they can't see from the other side of the court. So making teaching easier and maybe more effective.
That's huge. I love that. With the COVID pandemic and social distancing orders impacting most sports in the recent months, it seems like the Slinger Bag is a perfect solution. Have you seen an increase in demand? And what is some of the feedback you're getting from the early backers?
Yes, well, actually, no company, of course, likes to take advantage of what is a terrible situation around the world. But I think it's quite widely known that companies who are involved in things like home fitness. I was reading today in the press, how bicycle companies, cycle companies have been, their sales have quadrupled and things like that. So, of course, yes, Slinger also falls into the category of product which really lends itself to being used in a lockdown or an isolation kind of situation. And if you just look at our Slinger Bag Instagram page, you'll see a whole host of videos that have been posted by people who have found incredibly interesting ways to use Slinger, sometimes in the house, sometimes in their backyard, sometimes in their front drives, but creative ways to actually still practice some of the things important to them for tennis. So yes, we've seen a great uptick in interest in Slinger over the last couple of months.
That's great. And I know this call is geared towards investors, but we may have some tennis enthusiasts that have dialed in. How can someone get a Slinger Bag today? Are they available?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. We'd be delighted to take some orders from an event like this. So if you visit www.slingerbag.com, on the landing page there's a button which says Buy Now or Get It Now, and just click on there and follow the links. And products available in the US from the beginning of July.
That's great. So you've given us a lot of information. Can you tell us about the near-term milestones that investors can expect?
Yeah, so in our corporate presentation deck, you'll find at the back there that we've got some financials. So our short-term goal, our 5-year goal, if you like, is to reach $50 million. Of course, we're still pre-revenue. We're about to start in July with our revenue stream. Our first year goal is $10 million. And I just want to put into perspective, $50 million, what that really means. So I talked about the 20 million tennis players in the world that we're after. $50 million would mean reaching half of 1% of all of those players, and over a 5-year period. So I think that's a highly attainable goal. And, honestly, our financials should turn out to be conservative. But, that's where we're shooting for, firstly, a $50 million revenue mark. In terms of gross profit, because we're structured primarily as a direct-to-consumer company, and we're keeping our headcount low and to a minimal level, I'm expecting our gross profit percentage to be in the mid to high 40s, and so I think we'll end up being a quite highly revenue focused, but also a very profitable business ultimately.
Excellent. So, Mike, I have to congratulate you on the amazing progress. I love this story. I know this has to be compelling to investors. But can you give us a sense why investors should invest in Slinger Bag today?
I can give you 5 reasons, maybe, Janine, that would answer that question. First, as I just mentioned, the $50 million goal is a highly realistic goal for a company. It's half of 1% of our target market. Secondly, we're already a proven success through the Kickstarter campaign and through the reactions that we're seeing, from the market today. Everybody that ever sees a Slinger that plays tennis wants to get one. Certainly when they find out that it starts at $550, which is, 50% pretty much of any of our main competitors out there in the market. Thirdly, the management team, 100 years of experience. We've been there, seen it and done it. So I can't talk more than that. Fourthly, we have a patented product, unique. There isn't anything in the market that comes close to competing with Slinger. And so therefore, we have an opportunity to disrupt, to create a new market. And lastly, around the world, I'm selecting some of the most highly experienced distributors to represent the brand. So a combination of all of those, to me, is the ideal dream. It's a winning formula, and we're getting ourselves geared to start.
Mike, I love it. What a great story, and more importantly, what a great opportunity for investors. We are now going to transition to the participant Q&A portion of today's webcast. I would like to remind participants that if they would like to submit a question, to type it into the Ask a Question box located on the lower left portion of the screen. I'm going to get some questions for us, Mike. Okay. Congratulations on getting Nick Ballardie and the Bryan Brothers on board. What will their level of involvement be with Slinger moving forward?
They're already heavily involved with us, not only on promoting the brand, of course, but in the development of the product. So, in our early days, we used both Nick and the Bryans to help us fine-tune the product. Going forward, Nick is going to be presenting a coach's corner on our website, which will have we updated with regular drills. And Mike and Bob are going to be talking about Slinger whilst they're on tour in different parts of the world. We'll use them for appearances and, to do online social media interviews with various people.
Excellent. Our next question, with regard to competing products such as Tennis Tutor, Spin Shot, Lobster, and Playmate, which one of these is the market leader at present?
That's a very good question. I think probably my gut would say it's Tennis Tutor, but it's hard to tell. The market's quite fragmented and it's quite small. As I said earlier, right now, in the way that we're operating with Slinger, I think we are potentially going to be very quickly the #1 brand.
Great. Okay, can you talk a bit more about the other markets Slinger can potentially serve? How easy is it to pivot into another sports market?
Good question. So that's a really important thing for us going forward. So the first thing that we're doing, Janine, is that we are looking already at one of the fastest growing sports in the United States, which is pickleball. So we've already started the process of modifying the current tennis launcher into pickleball. We will then also be looking at padel tennis, which is a very important sport around the world outside of the US, but also coming to the US. And then lastly, we are adapting the current tennis launcher for another sport of tennis, which is called soft tennis, which is only played in Japan. But again, it's a very big sport in Japan. Longer term, meaning once we've proved our success in the tennis world, we already have some concepts which we're on the drawing board for baseball, for softball, and for a sport that is maybe even bigger than those sports called cricket, which is not played in the United States, but is huge in the rest of the world. And so we're looking at launcher options for those sports to get, again, within the framework of being transportable, affordable, and versatile.
Great. Could you provide some color on Slinger's revenue forecast for the next 5 years?
So as I say, year one, when I talk about year one, our financial year runs 1st of May to 30th of April. And so, yeah, we're looking at $10 million in the first year, and then gradually increasing that year on year up to the $50 million revenue in 5 years. The way that I'm looking at this is that in every market that we enter, my conversations are around about the number of regular players in the market, because that data exists. And then my challenge to the distributors that I'm talking to is, okay, what percentage of those people do you think we can reach year on year? And as I say, only by targeting a very small percentage of those communities, we end up with a very large business.
Great. Our next question is, what are the immediate markets Slinger is targeting, and what are the actions taken to make Slinger a brand known name?
Okay, in terms of the market, so, we're following the world of tennis, where tennis, in terms of the market size for tennis, first is the United States, second largest market is Japan, third largest market is Germany, followed by France. But there are some markets in Asia, of course, which are rising fast. So believe it or not, China, of course, is an obvious one, but it's very difficult to enter the Chinese market. So we're looking at that very carefully. But believe it or not, South Korea is a crazy market for tennis. Vietnam is a crazy market for tennis. Thailand and Singapore, crazy markets for tennis. So we're looking at those markets. So we obviously we're trying to manage the flow of launches by market, so that we can manage our inventory. There's only so many we can produce, at a given time at the moment. And so we're running out the markets in line with our availability of inventory, but based on the size and the importance of tennis in each market.
Great. We do have time for a couple more questions. The next one is, I've seen a lot of positive feedback on social media from people playing with your bag while in quarantine. Do you expect the same level of demand as social distancing guidelines are lifted?
Actually, I expect it to increase dramatically. So actually, we're running right at the moment, we're running a pre-sale campaign in the United States, which we started about 2.5 weeks ago. And we're using this pre-sale campaign to test all of our social media advertising, Google and Facebook ads. And we're finding that, in the last week, I know that the numbers are running around about $15,000 a day and increasing, week on week. The average purchase per day increases quite a bit. And that's as we solve the issues of, the algorithms that the people who are doing our advertising for us, get to more tennis players. But like I said earlier, I have been all over the world with Slinger now in the past year and a half. I have been on so many tennis courts, and I have never had anyone say they're not interested in buying it. And when I tell them that the entry price is $550, they nearly bite my hand off. So got to grab them while you can.
Oh, excellent. Okay, and our last question. We saw that Slinger is sponsoring the upcoming Battle of the Brits event. Can you talk about the event and Slinger's involvement?
Yeah. So again, through some of the contacts that I've obviously built up in tennis, the Battle of the Brits is an isolation COVID-19 tennis tournament taking place in London. Normally, in this week in London would be a very famous tennis event called Queen's, and then in 2 weeks' time would be Wimbledon. They've been cancelled, and so there's an appetite for tennis in the UK from the tennis fan community. So Jamie Murray, the brother of Andy Murray, has organized what they call the Battle of the Brits. It's the 8 top British players: Kyle Edmund, Dan Evans, Andy Murray's playing, and other players. And they're going to compete against each other without any fans present. And it's going to be streamed live in the US on the Tennis Channel. So, you'll be able to watch it there. But it takes place on June the 23rd. And our involvement is great because as a new brand, we are one of the main sponsors. And you'll see a lot of Slinger visibility on the court and, on the TV when it's on.
What a great opportunity for you. So, Mike, that does conclude our Q&A portion. I am so grateful we had this opportunity for you to share the Slinger Bag opportunity. Love this story. I think this is a great story for investors. Easy to understand the innovation in this space, the huge market, and the differentiation for what's available, and already the market exception, the acceptance from avid tennis players and beyond. So congratulations on everything that you've done.
Thank you very much, Janine. Thanks. Great to be part of it.
Great. So as a reminder to participants, Slinger Bag is listed on the OTC under the ticker SLBG. Their website is slingerbag.com for more information. We're so glad you can join us today, and thank you.